What's going on, people? It's yours truly, Mazi Mutafa, here for another episode of Wednesday Wisdom with Mazi Mutafa. We're back to enjoy this process of talking through a journey of building a successful nonprofit in Washington, D.C. I'm Mazi Mutafa, Executive Director of Words, Beats, and Life, and every Wednesday, beginning as close to 4 p.m. as I can, I'll go live right here on our YouTube channel to share experiences, answer your questions from my own experience, and build a set of guiding ideas grounded in culture, creativity, and community. I'm not here to give you the answers, but to be able to share my own experience for better and for worse. I would warn you that few of my friends or even my peers take advice from me, so proceed at your own risk. I say that specifically because I want you to take what's good from what I have to say and reject what doesn't feel right for you. If you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, click on it or the bell so you'll never miss a new episode um, to help us grow the community that's engaging. This week, I want my topic to be around cultural diplomacy. For those of you not super familiar with Words, Beats, and Life, we are an organization that talks about our work falling into 5 priority areas: arts education, creative employment, cultural diplomacy, centering marginalized voices, and for the culture. Uh, there's a lot of words because we do a lot of different kinds of events. And so from the very beginning of our work, we thought it was important for people to understand the why of what we do. Cultural diplomacy is not something that was a part of our initial mission. And so if you are a person creating a business, sometimes people will discourage you from wandering, from doing things that are outside of your core mission. I would encourage you in the very beginnings of creating a business to not be so tied to what it is that you believe to be your core business. Why? Because a lot of times people create a business with a particular set of goals in mind and believing that there's a community looking for those particular services. And one of the things you might find is that the community that is interested in, say, after school programming is not as large or as invested in the way that you're going to go about after school programming. So being open to thinking about how you can pivot. I know for members of my team throughout the years, pivoting has been something that is a bit of that is is a place of frustration for them. Um, I think it's critical. I think it's critical to be able to be, particularly when you're a small organization or company, to be open to pivoting. Pivoting means that you can adjust on the fly to what it is that's happening to be able to meet the ultimate objective of why you do what it is that why you do what it is that you do. Um, if you are unable to pivot, uh, that can often mean the end. It could mean a catastrophe. It could mean that the things that you want to do beyond this individual thing are not even possible because you're not able to be nimble enough to adjust in the moment. As a skill, as a human being, one of the things I would definitely encourage you to do is to think about what really matters to you in terms of the work that you do and what is kind of peripheral. Peripheral meaning that it is valuable but not important. Um, Cultural diplomacy was not a part of the initial vision of Words Beats Life. It literally was created serendipitously because a friend of mine who at the time was driving a cab in Washington, D.C., met an artist. My friend's named Trevor Young. Trevor Young was driving a cab at the time and met an artist from Uganda named Saba Saba, who just happened to be in the United States meeting with folks like Bill Clinton. It's crazy. Through the State Department. And so Saba got into Trevor's cab. Trevor his family is from Sierra Leone, and Saba Saba was from Uganda, and he was just telling him about the thriving hip hop community in Uganda. And Trevor said, "You got to meet my friend Mazi. He's running this organization called Words, Beats, and Life." We were probably 3 years old at that time as an organization, and Saba came and gave a talk to our students at the Benning Park Recreation Center, and he invited us to come to Uganda. Now, we did not immediately jump on a plane and run to Uganda because one person invited us, but this was key in terms of thinking about how we would approach cultural diplomacy, that we needed to know people on the ground who wanted us to be there. And there's a few reasons. One, when you go places you are not invited, that can be cultural imperialism, not necessarily cultural diplomacy. I have a friend named Dr. Jared Ball who believes that all of the things that we describe as cultural diplomacy are actually cultural tourism, because he says that many artists just go to places and engage with a select group of people. And I'm not necessarily being totally fair to his argument because I don't know all of it, but this idea that it's not diplomacy, because diplomats negotiate treaties between countries. So there's a commercial piece to it, not just cultural. So one of the things that I thought was really important after hearing Jared's critique was to think about how at some point we could get to a place where we had enough resources and enough bandwidth where we could not just be thinking about cultural diplomacy in the sense that everyone else participated in it, but in the way that Jared talked about. How could we develop economic ties between nations, between organizations in different nations doing similar work? And so that invitation to Uganda was the very first. We have now been to 20 countries in 23 years, 8 as recently as last year, to do a number of things. Traveling to be able to present workshops, to create public art, to be able to do master classes for artists at universities and in communities, to be able to host panel discussions in communities where hip hop already is, but might want master teachers from abroad to be able to come and offer another level of instruction. Now, one of the things about cultural diplomacy in the way that Jared was critiquing it is that oftentimes people will be sent abroad by a larger entity like the State Department or USAID or an American embassy abroad, that don't necessarily represent a community in the United States. They're just great artists who are traveling to be able to share their artistry. I personally don't think there's anything wrong with that, especially considering the fact that person-to-person diplomacy has value to those larger entities, also has value to the individual artists. I can think about artists like Asheru, who has been a part of the Next Level program through the State Department, but also as a result of the success of that travel, has gone on to do his own travel abroad, shot music videos abroad, collaborate with artists from abroad. He has a project called Sleepless in Soweto that was a project with South African artists. And this is the kind of person-to-person diplomacy that really has value. I have a friend right now who's organizing a similar exchange in Costa Rica for poets in partnership with the US government. Now, if you're a person that feels like the US government funding work that you do is not something you're interested in, cultural diplomacy can still happen. It just means that you're going to have to foot the bill for it. Because unfortunately, not a lot of funders in the United States are investing a tremendous amount of money in sending Americans abroad to be able to do the things that we do. The government is the primary funder of that kind of work. Now, you as an individual artist or organization can decide to dedicate resources to be able to do that. I know for us, that trip to Uganda, at one point in time, the District of Columbia's official arts agency, the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, had an initiative called the Sister Cities Program. That's actually how we got to Uganda for the very first time. We received a grant for probably $10,000 to be able to send myself and 3 other artists to Uganda to be able to do workshops and performances and participate in the Hip Hop Summit that I think at that time was probably 10 or 11 years old. That's critical because there are things like regional funders that get funding from national funders to be able to do performances at festivals abroad. So if you're an individual artist, getting into those networks is key. If you're an organization that's interested in having artists that are a part of your organization be able to travel abroad, getting into those networks is also a possibility to be able to fund it. I would also suggest there are plenty of individuals who are from abroad who would love to see American artists travel to their countries to be able to share what it is that they know and meet the people that are there. Why? What's the value in this kind of person-to-person diplomacy? Well, first off, one of the things that most people in America are not necessarily super cognizant of is the fact that we are told very little about what's happening abroad. What does that do to us as a citizen? Well, it makes us believe the few sources of information that talk about what's happening abroad. When is the last time you saw a news program that was about something amazingly great happening abroad that a commercial media outlet wanted you to know about? There are a few shows on networks like the BBC that'll do highlights of companies and individuals in different parts of the world. But that's special programming. The regular news, whether print media or online media, when it comes to stories about what's happening abroad, it's almost always negative. Either something terrible has happened, someone abroad has threatened us. And so our sense of what the world is in terms of being safe or dangerous is colored by the media that we see. I can think about all of the people that I know that when we take them abroad, their families tell them, be careful. Is the very first thing they tell them, no matter where we're going, whether we're going to Paris or we're going to Uganda or we're going to South Africa or we're going to Lebanon, it's be careful. Those people over there don't like us. And one of the craziest things, if you believe that, is when you actually travel abroad and find that many people abroad love the United States, love Americans, love American culture. Of course, there are people who don't, just like there are people in America who don't like other countries. But the overwhelming majority of people that we've encountered, and granted, our experiences are limited. A number of our trips abroad have been with the State Department or USAID, but a number of them have also been person to person or organization to organization. A great example is our partnership with an organization in Paris called Juste Debout, which means just standing. They are an international dance competition that tours somewhere between 15 and 19 countries every year to find the best dancers in hip hop, house, popping, and locking to invite them to compete on an international stage in Paris to win $10,000 per dancer. We discovered that through the Sister Cities grant. We happened to be in Paris, France, and Simone Jacobson, who was then the director of an initiative we had at that time called the Cipher, was familiar with Juste Debout because she had studied abroad as an undergrad and got introduced to their amazing organization. They've been doing Juste Debout. Juste Debout has been around for going on 30 years. So Simone said we needed to go visit them to find out whether or not there was an opportunity to collaborate with them. We met with the founders and the directors. They loved the possibility of being able to bring Juste Debout back to the United States because it hadn't been here in a number of years. And so for the last 4 years, we've been their U.S. partner. Why did that happen? It happened because we had a grant from the D.C. government to be able to travel abroad to do kind of performances and workshops in Paris. While we were there, one of the people on the trip had pre-existing knowledge and experience of an organization that they wanted us to partner with. So doing research about who it is that's abroad and ideally incorporating people who have relationships with the organizations and artists that you could be collaborating with is key to developing meaningful cultural diplomatic programs, right? There are a number of organizations in the United States whose primary purpose in the hip hop space in particular, is to travel abroad and engage with hip hop communities abroad. But one of the things that's happened recently in Washington D.C. is the go-go community has also tapped into this. And cultural diplomacy doesn't just have to be abroad; it can be within the United States. This idea of representing your community, your tradition, to people who are not familiar with it, can also happen in your own borders. One of the things that we're planning to do for the next 4 years or so is to really think about cultural diplomacy within the United States. Like, what does it mean to represent the DC hip hop community in Kansas, in Idaho, in Texas, in California, in all these places that are regionally specific and different and have their own nuance. So thinking about the ways in which cultural diplomacy can mean international, but can also mean national to communities that are not familiar with you. And in the national context, thinking about the ways in which you can develop economic ties becomes a lot easier, as you don't have to worry about exchange rates. You don't have to worry about the same kinds of shipping challenges that might exist in the country you might want to go to. And so thinking about national collaboration as an opportunity to think about cultural diplomacy. How do you represent your city, your community, your art form beyond your immediate geography? We live in a country where the overwhelming majority of Americans don't travel. I was literally in a conversation on Facebook last week with someone who said that I live in Washington, D.C., that traveling to Baltimore was going out of town. And yes, it is literally going out of town, but it's going literally 45 minutes away. That this idea that, so for folks like that, thinking about traveling around the world to represent their culture might be a really big step. But saying I want to go to Baltimore, or I want to go to Delaware, or I want to go to New Jersey seems more reasonable, more attainable, and less scary for most people. So I say that to say, when you're thinking about developing cultural diplomacy-based initiatives, you don't just have to be thinking about other parts of the world. You could also be thinking about territories within the United States. Traveling from Washington, D.C. to Puerto Rico is a kind of cultural diplomacy. Being able to engage with hip-hop communities, artist communities, dance communities outside of our own is another way to be able to be promoting cultural diplomacy because you are a representative of a community and a culture and a practice that might be there, but also be different. That this idea of being able to exchange information, build relationships, develop economic ties that benefit everybody should be part of the goal of your business if you're thinking about the value of cultural diplomacy. Now, the truth is, I live in Washington, D.C. Doing cultural diplomacy from Ward 8 to Ward 1 is cultural diplomacy. Because one of the things about living in Washington, D.C. is knowing, particularly for young people, traveling to neighborhoods that are not their own has its own set of risks. And so a lot of young people don't leave their immediate neighborhoods. We're just wrapping up a summer youth employment program where young people were going to be paid to be in our program who lived in Ward 8 and Ward 7, whose parents felt it was too unsafe for them to be able to travel to Ward 1 for programming. So cultural diplomacy doesn't, again, it could be within your own city. Think about folks who are in cities like New York, where they're in the Bronx. They could be doing cultural diplomacy to Brooklyn, Brooklyn to Long Island to et cetera. That it doesn't have to be the whole world. Just this idea that you are an ambassador of your culture, your community, your tradition, and that there's value in you developing economic ties, cultural ties, personal ties across geographies is a way to be able to empower yourself and your vision. Again, that was not part of the initial vision for Words Beats in Life. It was serendipitous. The Saba Saba invited us to come to Uganda. 2 years later, we found the resources and we were able to make that happen. But after that, we then made a commitment to go to Uganda almost every single year since then. And we've been able to see the country develop. We've been able to see roads that weren't there before that were paved now be paved. We've been able to see electricity in places that it wasn't because of, I don't know why I'm going blank, but those, the pads that solar panels, solar panels being installed throughout the country. So being able to watch a country develop in the time that you're there and engaging with the artistic community that's there to be thinking about, okay, that's one way diplomacy. How can we also then bring people back? So the way we talk about cultural diplomacy is, yes, we send artists abroad to be able to do master classes, performances, workshops, panel discussions in communities, but we also bring artists from abroad to perform in the US. It's been really transformational to be able to see artists come to the US and develop relationships beyond us that bring them back. So now they're suddenly international artists in their own countries that might have started with a relationship with us, might have started with a relationship with the State Department or USAID or some international NGO, but they then take the reins in being able to be diplomats on their own, for their own schools, for their own programs, for themselves as individual artists. That part of our responsibility is to build bridges of interconnectedness and mutual benefit, so that we're able to not just benefit individuals, but to be able to benefit communities. This is key to thinking about transformation. We once had a board chair named Dr. James White, who was the president of the board of another hip hop nonprofit. And one of the things he said to me before he stepped down from our board was, he said, Mazi, it never occurred to me that the best way to have a global impact was to have a really deep local impact. Shout out to Queena. I was just talking about you, and I added my microphone at your suggestion. But this idea that you can go really deep local and that there's value to people around the world for what you're doing locally. You just got to be able to broadcast it to them. You got to be able to talk to them about it. You got to be able to build relationships with them. And then be able to, in some instances, in the case of Queena, where you get an opportunity to be able to leverage that into opportunities for others. So as you're thinking about your business model, think about how am I going to be an ambassador for the work that I do, locally, regionally, nationally, internationally. I would encourage everyone to think about themselves. If you own a passport, you have the potential to be a cultural diplomat, representing being a member of a community that has a story to tell that an international community wants to connect to. They want to connect because they want to learn, because they also want to teach you. They also want to be able to teach you about them. And I think there's real value in just being a citizen of the world. There's this phrase that I'm globally known but locally accepted. That should be the goal of your business, to be able to be locally accepted but globally known, so that when people come from out of the country and they're coming to your state, your city, your region, you are a place that they must visit, because they know the value of what you do and want to be witness to it, so they can take that knowledge, that experience back to their own country, their own community, to be able to not just big you up, but to be able to think about how the work they're doing in their country could be made even better, or if not better, at least different, how it could be approached differently. Uh, so with that, as I said, as you're thinking about the mission of your company, your business, your project, I want to encourage you to first off make sure you have a passport, but second off to be thinking about yourself as a diplomat of your community, of your culture, of your tradition, and you can do that on your own, or you can do that with the backing of larger entities. Either one has value because you, as an individual or as a company, have value in and of yourself. And so being able to take it upon yourself to, when you're traveling, to look for communities that you're a part of, to be connected to, adds value to everyone, to you, to them, and to those that witness that process. All right. Hopefully this is helpful. I'm going to be talking about the other 4 priorities of Words Beats in Life in future episodes, but this one was dedicated to cultural diplomacy and how we think about it, and how I hope that some of you will be willing to think about and consider it. All right. This is my 3rd episode. I said if I get to episode 10, maybe I got something. Queenie got questions in the statements. It says, tell them anyone has the potential. Yes, they do. And especially if there's someone like Queenie that also has the drive to make it happen. That this idea that things just happen to people is not really how it works. Things happen to people, for people, with people that make them happen, that understand that telling your story to people who are willing to listen has the potential to make the dream that you have, the vision you have, a reality. But if you just keep it to yourself, if you just keep thinking one day I'll do it, one day you will do it, or one day you will be witness to seeing someone else do it. And as long as it gets done, that's what matters. But I want to speak life into all of the viewers to say that it is not enough for you to just be witness. I want to encourage you to be participant, because you have something unique to be able to share in your city, in your region, in our country, around the world. All right. Tune in for the next episode. See you all next Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Peace, y'all.